Good evening, all, and welcome back to another episode of Knockout Analysis presented by Cron Media.
Do, do, do.
I am your host, Steve Urseg, Astroboy, Ethan Chronister, and this is your co-host, Roman Dolidze, Mr. Whit Barnes. Today, we will be previewing another Apex card. We get two of them back to back, unfortunately. But first, let's go and do a recap of what we saw last week. Quite a few decisions, some finishes. Austin Bashi, Witt predicted correctly, submitted the UFC debuting John Giannis in round one. Nick Klein, correctly predicted by me, got knocked out by Pelayev. Trayshawn Gore got owned again. Hopefully he gets cut because I'm tired of looking at him. Nathan Fletcher got absolutely hornswoggled by Nakamura. Kevin Vallejo's put on a boxing clinic. Neil Magny did Neil Magny things. Nora Cornhole did not live up to her name with us. Esteban Ribovic won fight of the night and put on an absolute display. Chris Duncan, another fight of the night, absolute display. And Tatsuro Taira he took care of business and submitted Hyung Sung Park in the second round. But that'll move us in to this next week's card. Roman Dolidze versus Hernandez is the UFC fight night. And that gets started with Cody Brundage facing off against Eric McConaughey. Both of these fighters coming off of a loss in their last fight. Cody Brundage, I believe we've spoke on it once before, correctly. He's the king of weird fights.
Yeah, Mansour Abdul Malik, man. About a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Yep, he is the king of weird fights. All of his fights seem to end in dramatic fashion by whatever it may be. In this case, he has a 11-6-1 record, facing off against McConaughey with a 9-3-1 record. Pretty even in all the measurables except for reach, which is a 5-inch advantage for McConaughey. McConaughey lost in his last fight earlier this year to Ruzaboyev, which is a fighter that we think highly of here on Knockout Analysis, so that's not a bad loss to have at all. It's hard at this point to bet against Cody Brundage just off the way that his fights end. But I'm going to do it anyways. And I'm going to say Cody Brundage is going to lose this fight by second round TKO.
Yeah, I just think the projector above the ring is going to fall into the middle of the octagon in the middle of this fight, and it's going to be a draw. You know, it's just what Cody Brundage does in all of his fights. You know, people see the draw and the no contest. I view those as losses for him. You know, he didn't win those fights. You know, the Razak-Hassan fight, there was punches to the back of the head from Razak-Hassan, and it was ruled a no contest. But Razak-Hassan did wobble him to the ground. It was going for the finish, and that fight he was going to lose. It was pretty apparent. And Mansour Abdul Malik, you know, there was a head clash, and it affected Cody Brundage more than it did Abdul Malik, and Abdul Malik finished him. You know, and that was a close fight in that third round, closer than I anticipated, but I just don't view Cody Brundage as all that good. You know, people want to say the fights are weird and all that stuff, but I think he's lost those fights. You know, Julian Marquez is a layup for anybody that's UFC level at this point, and the Zachary Reese fight was also quite weird, you know, as far as him getting a win there. You know, he hasn't beat anybody that's super high level at this point. McConaughey, this is his second fight. You know, like Cron mentioned, Ruzaboyev, very good fighter, has 46 professional fights. It's absolutely absurd the work that he's done in mixed martial arts at this point. You know, I just think McConaughey, they were saying on the broadcast during that Seattle card that he fought on, that he was about to be done with mixed martial arts. He was about to quit training and go on to something else because he hadn't gotten an opportunity anywhere else. And that's also going to be a common theme in this card with another fighter that we'll talk about a little bit later. But he was about to be done, and he get the short notice call against a killer, and he did it. And I think This is kind of a now or never moment for him at 35. He's fighting in his weight class at light heavyweight. Cody Brundage is fighting up a weight class. This is short notice for both guys. MMA Lab is a very good gym for McConaughey. I'm going to take the underdog here with Cron at the plus 145. Aaron McConaughey. I think it's going to be an early finish. Either way it goes, not a whole lot of wrestling in this one.
That'll move us into the next one, which will be Gabriela Fernandez facing off against Julija Stolyarenko. If you're a record watcher, I already know where you're going with this one. 10-3 record for Gabriela Fernandez. 11-9-2 record. So if we follow the sentiment that Witt just had last time, she's 11-11.
Yep.
So the fact that she's still in the UFC is somewhat baffling. She probably's got lips that could suck the chrome off a doorknob or something, because we have no idea how she still has a UFC contract. She lost her last fight. Before that, she did beat Molly McCann. But take that for what you will. She lost her last fight before that, and then she won her fight before that by submission. And then she lost her last two. So she doesn't even really have... she's like 2-8 in the UFC. So the fact that she's still in here, I don't know. She must be good at something. But fighting's not it. That being said, we got a negative 400 favorite for Gabriela Fernandez. I'm smashing the over on this. I'm smashing that line. I'm taking Gabriela Fernandez by first round finish.
Yeah, I mean, Julia Sarenko, straight out of Lithuania. Shout out to Modestas Bukowskis, man. She's done her very best Lucas Brzezinski impression by losing a lot of fights and still fighting her way into the UFC. I think it's pretty simple. I don't know what her no contests were, like I do with the Brundage situation. She has had two draws. One of them is a majority draw, and the other one's just a draw. So I don't know what the situations are here in these Lithuanian regional promotions. But all I know is she's fought 22 fights and she's only won half of them. She is known for her grappling. She has 10 submissions. Was big on the grappling scene early in her career as well. She has very good arm bars, probably inspired by a Ronda Rousey at one point in her career. But Gabrielle Fernandez, I don't find her to be super high level either, despite the record. The Wing Kong victory will go down as probably the biggest in her career. That was a massive, massive fluke. I think if that fight happens 100 times, she loses 99 times. And we saw the one time that she would pull off that victory. Wing Kong was showboating way too much in that fight. Was very, very much up in all departments. And she paid for it. She got clubbed and subbed by Fernandez. I mean, in this specific fight, the reason why the line is the way it is, I think that, besides the record, I think that Fernandez has many more paths to victory than Storyalenko, who really only has one path, and that's by fluking an armbar. I'm going to take Fernandez. I think she's going to get an early knockout. I think she's better on the feet, and she's better in almost every facet of the game than Storyalenko. And she's going to continue to rise up the ranks and have a 3-fight winning streak after getting the knockout in this one.
That'll move us right into the next one, where we will have Euros Medic facing off against Gilbert Urbina. Now, we're not sure exactly if his last name is pronounced Medic or Medic, but we're going with Medic strictly off the fact that his nickname is the Doctor. But he is coming off of a loss in his last fight via 30-second knockout earlier this year to Soriano. His opponent, Mr. Urbina, also coming off of a loss in his last fight. He lost to Radke in his last fight via first-round knockout 4 minutes and 47 seconds in. So both fighters coming off of an early knockout loss. Pretty big height advantage for the Doctor here. 4-inch reach advantage for Urbina. I think this one It's got potential to be a pretty decent fight regardless of the line. But I'm going to go ahead and say the doctor wins this fight by unanimous decision.
Yeah, man. I mean, Uros trains out of Alaska, I believe. Shout out to him. You know, he's Serbian, but he does train out there in that cold wasteland out there. Shout out to Alaska. Um, yeah, I mean, I picked him in his last fight. He was a pretty decent favorite in that one, and he got knocked out early, got caught with a left hook. And the same thing has really happened to Soriano. Soriano's been in the UFC for, what, since 2021? And he has only 4 fights in that time, if you count his Ultimate Fighter fight. And so he hasn't been very active. It's been about 16 months since his last fight, give or take, in which he got knocked out. He's been finished in 3 of his 4 fights. So one thing I can say, I think this is going to be another early fight. You know, I think it's going to end in the first 7 minutes or so. Knockout one way or another. I'm going to take Euros to do it. I think he's a little bit more high level. I think he's more active. I think he trains more often. He has more fights. And while he has gotten finished in all of his losses, he has finished all of his wins in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And I think he's beaten, I mean, obviously more guys. And I think he's beaten slightly better guys than an Orion Costco. So I'm going to take him to win this pretty early on with a knockout.
Different result or different paths to the same result is what we have.
Indeed.
In this one, the next one, we have number 14th ranked Jocelyn Edwards facing off against Priscilla Cachiera, who is another fighter that we have previously talked about on the podcast. We may have even talked about Edwards. I definitely think we have talked about Edwards before. Yeah, Edwards won her fight in April of this year via first round knockout against Chandler, the one that's like 865 inches tall. Facing off against Cachiera. Again, both fighters coming off a win in their last fight. Now, for you boxing fans, we know that Panama is a place that puts out incredible fighters. We've seen this. If you ever watched the Hands of Stone movie on Netflix, if you're a boxing fan, watch it. If you're an Ana de Armas fan, watch it. Either way, you want to spin it, watch it. Could have completely different reasons for watching it, but watch it anyways. Fighting a Brazilian, 5-inch reach advantage for Edwards, 2-inch leg reach advantage, and a 1-inch height difference. I'm not going to spend too much time on this fight. I think this is levels fights here. One of those fights where Edwards is just levels above her opponent. I'm giving this one to Edwards, and I'm saying she does it in the second round.
Yeah, I really don't have much more to add, really. I mean, I think she's beaten better opponents, been against, I mean, I'm not going to completely discredit Cachoeira because she's lost to some of the best in the world. Jasuda Vicious, Valentina Shevchenko, you know, those are tough fights, but I think Jocelyn Edwards is much better on the ground. I think she has hands as well. She's on a streak right now. She has won her last 2 by finish, and I think she's going to do the same to Cachoeira. She's younger. You know, I think she has a longer reach as well. I'm not on that screen right now yet.
She has a 5-inch reach advantage.
Yeah, she's younger. She's taller. She has a 5-inch reach advantage. And I think she's more a complete fighter. You know, I think it's kind of no-brainer. You know, I look at these lines throughout the week, and this is one that's grown. Jocelyn Edwards was a minus 280 on ESPN, and now she's a minus 425. So the public is agreeing with what Cron and I are looking at. I see this one going late. I think Jocelyn did very well pull off. I want to say she gets a sub in this one, a late submission like she did in her previous bout. And I'm going to go Jocelyn Edwards by 3rd-round submission.
The fighter I was mentioning, by the way, to anyone who doesn't know ball when it comes to boxing, is Roberto Duran.
Shout out to him.
The one who quit in the ring against Sugar Ray Robinson. But we won't talk about that. We won't talk about that. He said no mas because he was getting his ass beat. That'll move us to the next one. we have Elijah Smith facing off against Toshiomi Kazama. Obviously, Japanese facing an American here. And we're setting the timeline back about 80 years with this one. But we'll see what happens this time. This is a pretty evenly matched up measurables fight here. Elijah calls himself Elijah Swift Smith. He come off of a win in his last fight against Morales via unanimous decision earlier this year. Kazama, he is a scary looking dude, I won't lie to you. Also coming off of a win in his last fight, August of last year, via submission, so he hasn't fought in a full calendar year. This one could be interesting. I wanna try to make a prediction here, but this is one of those fights I feel like is gonna end pretty quick, or it won't. I'm gonna say this one has potential for fight of the night right here. I'm gonna say this is an ugly split decision win for Kazama here.
Ooh, turning back the time and changing the result, man. I mean, USA versus Japan out here. Um, Elijah Smith, I will say something about him, man. I think his dad fought in the UFC as his corner man. I can't remember his name at the moment. It leaves me.
If it's
But
Anthony, that just made it worse.
I think they look slightly different. Anthony Smith. But Antoine Ho and Vince Morales, man. Both of those fights, like the Contender Series fight and his previous fight, were both very entertaining to watch. Absolute wars in one way or another. Elijah Smith was on the verge of getting finished in both of those fights, but he found a way to stay in them and win the first two rounds. And has not necessarily faded in the third round, but I think his opponents have just stepped up. Like Vince Morales has been known to do that. He almost finished Raul Rosas in his last fight, and Antoine Ho he's a very interesting guy, man. You know, the face tats, New Zealander, just has that dog in him. You know, he's that kind of fellow out there. I see this going the complete distance again. I think these guys are going to scrap it out. I think Elijah Smith's a little bit better, and I think this is a step down in competition for him. I think Vince Morales is a good deal better than Toshiyami Kazama, and I kind of agree with the line here. You know, I think he should be a big favorite. I don't think it should be this big because I don't really see a finish in this one. I think Elijah Smith's going to win a 29-28 decision like he has in his last two fights, and I've really no reason to believe otherwise at this point. I need to see some finishing potential from him in order to predict some finishes. But I'm going to go Elijah Smith 29-28, and he'll continue to build as he is only 22 years old.
That'll bring us to the last fight of the prelims, which is Julius Juicebox Walker facing off against Raffael the Lion Cerquiera. Both of these fighters coming off of a loss in their last fight. This is a light heavyweight bout, so we have some big boys here. 6'4", 205 for Julius. 6'3", 205 for Cerquiera. 2-inch reach advantage for Juicebox and a 1.5-inch reach advantage for Cerquiera. Mr. Walker coming off a loss in his last fight to Alonzo Minifield, which is a hot prospect right now, so not a bad loss if you ask us. And his opponent, I believe, memory suits me correct, lost to Bukaki in his last fight.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Bukowskis, the Baltic Gladiator himself, and then his loss before that was to Aslan. So neither of those are a bad loss if you ask us here at Knockout Analysis. That being said, this will be fight of the night. This is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight for 15 straight minutes, and it's going to go in the way of Raffael Cerquiera by split decision.
Holy shit. I think we're going to be the only podcast that picks Raffael Cerquiera. Because I'm going with him too, low-key, man. I mean, I think Julius Walker is one of those guys that has, like, a really good performance against a contender early. And is just, I don't know. I think he caught lightning in a bottle in that fight. He looks good. I think it was a clear 29-28 for Minifield. I don't think it should have been a split. I think he found one of those, has had one of those performances, and he's going to succumb to the pressure in this one, because he has to win. He has to win this fight. Both of these guys have to win this fight. Julius Walker, short notice guy. I don't know if he has a 2 or 3 fight contract. Raffael Cerquiera is also a short notice guy. I think they gave him a 3 fight contract, and he is the other guy I was referring to earlier in the video. He almost quit fighting because before he got his UFC fight, he was offered to fight for $70 in an unnamed promotion. I read that in an article earlier this week, and I was like, holy shit.
Putting his life on the line for $70.
I'm like, dude, I can't even take the old lady out to dinner for $70. Like, that's absolutely insane work from the whatever promotion in Brazil that is. We got losses to Ibo Aslan. I'll never forgive Magomed Ankalaev for what he did to Ibo Aslan. And Modestas Bukauskas, who should be a top 15 fighter. These are both tough losses. And I hope he's learned from them, because he's lost because he's been going backwards, and I don't really think that suits his style. He has a lot of finishes. Demo Fight's not a great promotion, but he is a 4-time champion there for what it's worth. The question is, has he lost confidence? My answer is going to be no, is because he's continuing to accept these fights. And Julius Walker, I will say something that where I see holes in his game, and I know he won this fight in 2 minutes, but he did fight Oklahoma Zone Myron Dennis. Shout out to him. I do not know him personally, but he is an Oklahoma light heavyweight out here, so I gotta see it. And I peeped that fight earlier in this weekend. He was getting rocked by Myron Dennis, man. There is holes in Julius Walker's game, especially if you can put combos on him. And Alonzo Minifield isn't a guy that really puts combos on you. He is a power puncher, and a lot of people are scared to get into that line of fire. Nobody has been very willing to go band for band or punch for punch with Alonzo Minifield, and I can't blame him. But I think Raffael Cerquiera, man, I think he's gonna do it. A lot of people are calling him frauds. People are calling him the worst UFC fighter of all time. But Julius Walker, I think he's kind of gonna have a little bit of a what's his name? Who's that damn Georgian dude? Guram Kutseladze, man. You have a close fight with a very high-level contender, went Guram's way, but Julius didn't go his way, and a lot of people think you're a lot better than you actually are. You go in a fight with this guy that's not nearly on that level. You think you're a little bit better than you are, and you lose. You just straight up lose. You get absolutely hornswoggled, as Cron would say. And I think this is going to be, I think Raffael Cerquiera, I think he's going to be able to survive in this fight. I think he's going to get a knockout in the second. Plus 475. Shout out to, is that Kevin Durant?
That's Bruce Brown.
Shout out Bruce Brown. People forget, man.
I've taken enough of the fights. You can have a few in a row here.
Man, this next fight I think is going to be the most lopsided one on the card, truthfully. Christian Leroy Duncan, Eric Anders. Cron's doing a live pack opening out here with Ben Simmons. He's going to feed that to his cat. But we got Eric Anders, man. Eric Anders is old. He had an unk off with Chris Weidman in UFC 310. Somewhat questionable stoppage, especially in Chris Weidman's last fight. I was disappointed. And he hasn't really beaten anybody but jobbers in the last, 5 years or so. Like, the best person he's beaten this decade is Darren Stewart. Woo. Jamie Pickett, who's on the Mount Rushmore of UFC jobbers. And Kyle Dawkins, who's returning to the UFC. Good for him, man, to get another opportunity. I don't remember who he's fighting. I saw the name earlier this week. He's taking a short notice fight. But shout out to Kyle Dawkins. Shout out to him. We got Jalen Brunson over here.
That's a
on
terrorist.
the live pack opening. But Christian Leroy Duncan, man, I'm going to take him to win pretty early on here. I think he's going to out-grapple Eric Anders. I think Anders is going to try to make this ugly early on with the grappling, especially against the fence. But we saw what Leroy Duncan was doing in his last fight against Pulaev. There was a lot of fence grappling in that one as well, in which he got the 30-26 decision. I want to take Leroy Duncan to get a finish here in the second round.
He's got the
TKO.
worst nickname in martial arts, but I'm not picking to. Not much more different than what you just said. He's been invited to an unction, and he's going to disrupt it.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea why they keep giving him
Shout out Dakota
these
Raider.
matchups. Shout out Bam Adebayo as
Shout
the
out
pack
our.
opening continues.
I got an NFL pack now, so keep going, and I'll update you as I go. This is what happens when we talk about Apex cards.
Cron does a pack opening in concurrence to the Apex card. You know, we're hitting a lot of different genres here on this podcast today. It's not all UFC, man. And I guarantee you it's going to be in the description underneath this video. Shout out to the people that read our descriptions. Because I spent a lot of
Hey,
time typing those. Fuck you, Travis Etienne.
damn.
But we got Gene Matsumoto and Miles Johns at bantamweight. Uh, Gene Matsumoto was in an absolute war in his last fight with Rob Font. Definitely one of the best fights of the card. May have won fight of the night. I don't really remember. That was a good deal of time ago. Actually, that might have been the same card as Minifield, man. Yeah,
What
Minifield
was
Walker won fight of the night on that card. Yeah, that was a good fight, Matsumoto and Font. And I think Matsumoto didn't win the fight. You thought it was very close. Could have gone either way. I've heard arguments for both sides, but I think Rob Font was landing damaging strikes and doing what he needed to do. You know, I thought they were going to give it to Matsumoto because he was 16-0 and he was a young prospect. And that's usually what the judges will do in close fights. They'll protect the undefeated record, but I think they made the right decision. And Miles Johns, man, I like Miles Johns. He goes out there and he swings for the fences. I don't know if he's ever going to be a ranked bantamweight at this point in his career. His record in the UFC, I think, is slightly padded. You know, he's beaten the people he's supposed to beat, but they're not anything special, you know. Not the greatest track record, you know. 3 out of his last 4 have been wins, or, well, 3 out of his last 5 have been wins. The Dan Argueta fight, which he lost, was overturned due to Dan Argueta being on PEDs. Vince Morales, as we talked about earlier, sneaky good fighter that he got a win off of, you know. Cody Gibson, Oklahoma Zone, he got a win off of. Silva Andrade, and, you know, he lost to Jungle Boy Lima late last year. And he swings for the fences, man, and he does his thing. He's not the most technical fighter, and that's costed him in a lot of these fights against higher level guys like Mario Batista, you know. And I think that's going to do the same thing here in this fight with Matsumoto. I think Matsumoto's good on the ground. I think he's good on the feet. I think he's going to out-volume Miles Johns in this fight. And it's going to frustrate Miles like he was against Jungle Boy, not being able to land his big power punches. I think Gene Matsumoto takes a 30-27 decision.
Before I make my pick, I'm about to show you some of the most mythical card pools you'll ever see in your life.
Cron pull it downtown.
First off, we got
Who the hell is that?
well, it fell on the ground. That's where it goes. It was Sam Ellinger,
What a guy.
a clear Kyle Trask card.
Okay.
We got Trey Lance, rookie. San
Getting the
Francisco
throwback pack
card.
out here.
We got Witt's gonna absolutely bust on his screen when he sees this.
Is that the GOAT, Kellen Mond? Yeah, that is the GOAT. And that is UFL legend, Kellen Mond now.
Hmm.
San Antonio Brahmas starting quarterback right there.
And then
People that don't know at home.
the GOAT, James Robinson, won me a fantasy league.
People forget, man.
The GOAT, T-Law. For those who don't know, Witt is a Jaguars fan. A cool looking Michael Carter card. Laviska Chenault, Jaguars card. Another T-Law card that looks a little cooler. And a clear Mac Jones Patriots card.
You gotta send that to PSA, man. Get that bad boy graded.
I gotta send it to any Patriots fans I know because if not, I'm gonna use it as toilet paper. That being said, I'm gonna agree with Witt on this one. I don't even know what Witt said, but I'm gonna agree with him because that's how little I care about that fight. Well, now we will move on to Andre Please Touch Me Feely, facing off against Christian Rodriguez. Andre Feely coming off of a loss in his last fight to Milk Coffee, Niqueziel Costa. 24-12 record with one no contest. Christian Rodriguez 12-3 record with a loss in his last fight as well. 4-inch reach advantage for Feely. 3-inch height advantage for Feely. 4-inch leg reach advantage for Feely. Everything on paper but the record says that Feely should win this fight. Both of these guys lost to the same person in their last fight, mind you. That's an interesting tidbit if Witt didn't know that. So basically, this is a title eliminator for Niqueziel Costa, and whoever loses this or whoever wins this will face Costa's wrath once more. I think I'm actually going to go against the grain here, and I'm going to pick the 200 underdog, Andre Please Touch Me Feely.
Yeah, man, Andre Feely has fought damn near everybody at this point. He's 35. He's had 36 fights. I think he's fought a Max Holloway. The Cub Swanson fight was incredibly close. I think he could have very well have lost that fight. Has a pretty sizable favorite. Danny Ige. Who else is on here? Bryce Mitchell, Joanderson Brito. Shout out to him. Hope he's doing all right tonight. Yair Rodriguez. And yep, there he is, Max Holloway. He did fight him. People forget, but I did not. Yeah, Andre Feely, he is definitely on the all-tattoo team in the UFC. Has very nice pieces. Shout out to them. But he is a little bit old at this point. It's hard for me to pick him. There's plenty of guys he can beat. Especially here in the Milky Costa Bowl, is what we're going to call it. I think Christian Rodriguez, he's younger. I think his cardio is better. And if he can get this fight to the ground, based off what I saw in the last fight, I think it might be trouble for Andre Feely. I'm going to take a decision here. I think this is going to be closer than the line suggests. So if you're a gambling man, you might want to sprinkle something on Feely because this fight will play out close in my mind. I don't think there's going to be a finish. I'm going to take Rodriguez, 29-28 split. I think he's going to get the young prospect advantage here in the Apex from the judges. And I expect it to be a close fight here.
That'll move us to the next fight, which will be a ranked matchup between number 8, Yasmin Lucindo, facing off against number 12, Angela Hill. This is Angela Hill, also known as the Decision Merchant, that she is, facing off against Lucindo here, coming off of a loss in her last fight. She is a bit more in the finishing category. She's got 17 victories and 11 finishes, where Angela has 12 decisions and 18 victories. So, Angela Hill, we've talked about her before. She is a volume thrower. She's going to throw volume at you, and she's going to come at you for the whole 15 minutes. And just hope that whatever she lands is enough to win at the end because she's not really much of a finisher. Whereas her opponent, Miss Lucindo, the 8th ranked fighter, is a finisher, looking to finish. It's probably going to be unpopular. I mean, the line agrees with me here, but I'm going to take Lucindo to win this fight. I think she's going to knock her out. If not, she's going to win by split decision.
No. Yeah, I mean, y'all have heard me 1,000 times say it at this point. Never bet women's MMA because it's incredibly unpredictable. But this is one time I would because I think this line's hilarious. Yasmin Lucindo is 17 years younger, longer reach, and better on the ground at this point. Angela Hill is a UFC legend. She is a staple. She's been here for a long time, but she has no finishing potential. Her last finish was in January of 2020. That was what, two presidents ago, which was the same president we have now, I think.
Indeed.
And right before COVID. So it's been quite a bit of time since Angela Hill's gotten a finish. And I like a fighter who has finishing potential. I think Lucindo's going to be able to have a good round on the ground. Ryman accidentally. Shout out Chris move. And I think she's going to be able to get this done. She's going to be able to stun Angela Hill. She's not going to have a whole lot of respect for her lack of power because in her 32 fights, she only has 6 finishes. But, women's fights, man, it's always hard for me to predict a finish. I'm not going to do it in this one because Angela Hill has been proven difficult to finish. She has never been knocked out in her career, if I'm reading this correctly. Yep, she has never been knocked out. But every dog does have a day, man. Nicholas Dalby had his day earlier this year. Max Holloway had his day last year. And Angela Hill, she's 40. She's not getting any younger. I would take the 17-6, much younger fighter over an 18-14 Angela Hill. I think Yasmin Lucindo is going to get the KO in the first round and a half here.
That'll move us on to the next one. An unranked bantamweight fight between Steve Astroboy Erceg and Ode, the Jamaican sensation Osbourne. Both fighters are coming off of a fight earlier this year, a loss for Erceg, a win for Osbourne. Now, Erceg's loss did come to Brandon Moreno, so I do not hold that against him. That is a good loss. Brandon Moreno is pretty good. Ode Osbourne coming off of a win in his last fight. I believe he fought Luis Gurriel.
Mm-hmm.
He did.
Indeed.
He starched that man in the second round. This fight, it's got a pretty ridiculous line. It's not ridiculous. Let me just stop you there. Steve Erceg's going to knock him out in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, this should be cut and dry for Steve Erceg, and for the people that have been following the career of Dominic Reyes and Steve Erceg, this has been a parallel that's been drawn on the internet here lately. Steve Erceg had a close fight with the champion, the current champion, and then he's been on a little bit of a losing streak, lost to 2 guys, got finished in his fight after the belt, lost a unanimous decision, and now he's fighting a much lesser fighter that he should easily beat, which Dominic Reyes, he got knocked out by Blachowicz, lost to somebody else who I do not remember, and then he absolutely got owned by Ryan Spann, a fighter he should never lose to, 9 times out of 10. I hope that's not the case for Steve Erceg. He should be a pretty sizable favorite. Ode Osbourne, who won his last fight, which we did correctly predict on Knockout Analysis on the worst card of all time, Emmett versus Murphy. He was able to get that knockout in the second round, looked faster on the feet, was able to defend the takedowns as predicted on Knockout Analysis once more. I'm going to take some laps on that one because Ode Osbourne was a sizable underdog in that one as well. Now, if I am gambling, I'm not coughing up $600 to win $100 on Erceg. I might sprinkle in something on Ode because I think it's worth it. I don't think Erceg is really going to go for the takedown, which is where he can absolutely dominate this fight. Ode is fast on the feet, but he is exploitable in the grappling. I think Erceg should take that path to victory here and get back on track. But I don't think he will. I think he's going to make it a grinded out fight and he gets a late finish. I think it's going to be a late second, early third round finish here for Steve Astroboy Erceg. He gets back on track and he potentially fights up the rankings. Maybe reschedule that fight with Alex Perez that was supposed to be in this place. That's what I hope for him at least. Shit, Astroboy needs a win. He's kind of a fan favorite here at the flyweight division.
Indeed. Well, I took that one because my name was on it. You're taking this one because your name was on it. We have reached the pinnacle of the evening.
Anthony Hernandez, Roman Dolidze, man. I like this main event for an Apex card. I can't really complain about it. Anthony Hernandez has become a massive fan favorite in a short period of time, mostly due to the Michel Pereira performance. And Michel Pereira, as consistently agreed on this show, we think he's kind of overrated. He is exciting, but his record is a little bit padded because he is exciting. The UFC wants him to win because he is an entertainer, but he's not necessarily the highest level of guy. And Anthony Hernandez showed that on an Apex card and absolutely dominated him for how long that fight lasted. And he decided to mercifully finish him in the fifth round when he could have probably finished him in the third or fourth, but he was just wrestling him. And Michel Pereira had about 3 minutes of cardio, and the fight was pretty much over after the first round. But Brendan Allen, close fight early. Brendan Allen does what he does, goes out there, looks kind of impressive in the first round, looks like he could be a title contender one day, and then he completely blows the fight against Anthony Hernandez. And that's just what Brendan Allen does. You know, I don't put a lot of merit on either of those wins. I do like that Anthony Hernandez does what Merab does. He likes to weaponize his cardio in his fights, and that's been a lot for people to handle. But Roman Dolidze, he's big, like he's massive for this division. He does have a light heavyweight victory over the one and only Anthony Smith, and he is kind of on a streak here. You know, losing to Nasruddin Imavov in a 5-round main event, close fight according to the scorecards. Martin Vettori, he lost that first fight, but he was able to get his lick back here pretty recently, and in the Apex, he has 5-round experience. He's able to get quite a few finishes in his regional career, going into his UFC career. Phil Hawes, Jack Hermanson is a good finish. Martin Vettori, nobody's going to be able to finish him. I just think he is going to have a size advantage in this fight, and I don't think Anthony Hernandez has faced a guy with the physical presence that Roman Dolidze has. Because Roman Dolidze, he's a very weird fighter. Nothing really sticks out. Like, he has decent power. His grappling's fairly high level. But he's just able to be more dense and more goofy and win the fights, which is kind of a theme in the middleweight division here. And I see him doing that here. I think he's going to win the first 3 rounds, and he's going to survive the last 2 rounds. 48-47 decision for Roman Dolidze. Anthony Hernandez, I think he's going to have to use more cardio than he anticipates against a much more physically imposing fighter. And I think he's slightly overhyped right now, but we'll see if he is able to rise to the occasion as a minus 350 favorite.
I'm going to keep this real short, sweet, and simple. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez and Roman Dolidze have both fought Kevin Holland. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez was knocked out in 30 seconds by Kevin Holland. Dolidze made this man, Kevin Holland, quit on the stool after the first round. That's all the basis I need. I was going to pick Hernandez before I saw that, but now we're picking Roman Dolidze to win by 3rd round knockout. Cage kick, Showtime kick, whatever he wants. It's happening.
If Roman Dolidze does a Showtime cage kick, I might fucking pass out, man. My landlord might come upstairs and evict me, bro, if he gets a cage kick, bro.
That'll bring us to the end of this episode. Be sure to check this out on YouTube as soon as Mr. Barnes gets it uploaded. Check out, keep posted on, if you're a local person, for us, local, if you're an Oklahoma native, we have some close friends of the show that are fighting this weekend. Mr. Reeder will be fighting for a belt tomorrow night. Mr. Tater McSpadden, who we hope to have on the show soon, will be fighting as well, defending his belt. And a few more people. Former UFC fighter Jimmy Bean will be in there. the just fighting in XFN since his UFC career is probably done. So check those things out. We'll see if we can find a way to post the links to wherever they're going to be fighting at. Usually it's like a pay-per-view card that costs like $10 to get. Mr. Barnes isn't really close enough anymore that he could go watch it live, but could if he wanted to, but that's a hike to go watch two people he knows and a whole bunch of people he doesn't. That being said, check this out on YouTube. Check us out on Spotify, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We appreciate you guys for watching. Be sure to check out our sponsors, shankitgolf.com, cowboyrevolution.com, and w.gg. Use code Conyo Media at checkout for 15% off at all those places. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.
Doop, doop, doop.